Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and this is going to be another video covering the gameplay walkthrough for the Dwarf campaign that CA released. So we're covering different things at different times. This video in particular is going to be going over the building and tech tree. So just again glimpsing, taking little glimpses of the campaign video and just tearing it apart. So they do show us quite a bit. The first thing I wanted to pick out here is the different kind of repainted edicts. They're now called commandments, I believe. So for the dwarves, you're going to have 4 different ones: Masters of Steel and Stone, which basically reduces construction costs and recruitment costs and increases capacity. Empower the guilds, more growth and tradable resources. High King's Tribute, more tax rate. And then Venerate the Ancestors, which increases public order and drives down vampiric and chaos corruption. So kind of the cookie cutter stuff we're used to, but now this time it's been infused with the lore. I like the emphasis on the guilds and then veneration of the ancestors. This is straight up taken out of the Dwarfen lore. So again, good to see that we're going to be able to choose between the different edicts and commandments. Again, it does require you to have all 3 provinces. Now they go into the technology tree. There's a whole bunch here. Mostly it's going to be broken down into the way of the guilds and the way of the clans. The way of the guilds is going to be focusing on more civic and economics, whereas the way of the clans is going to focus more on upgrading your units, giving them different buffs and things like that. Now we're going to be covering these sort of snippets of each one because there is a lot to cover here. Really cool stuff especially the top tier stuff that you can unlock. It's going to be pretty incredible. So here, this is going to be a whole bunch of the ones that we saw that I'm clipping out from Way of the Guilds. So this one is all economically focused. If you look around, you'll see a bunch of things that basically increase percentage of income. Some of them actually for the gem cutters and breweries. It's nice to see the bread and butter of the dwarven economy right there. So a lot of bonuses to income. Also growth. You can see that here and there, +2, +1. The interesting one I thought was autonomy of the holds, which basically requires you to have a commandment active. So we haven't seen that before, an edict interplaying with the technology. So this is one way to further increase the efficacy of your edicts and commandments. So that's relatively interesting. Public order, you're able to buff here and there amongst all your provinces, although it has been stated in the past that for the greenskins, public order is not a grave concern. Mostly they are pretty consolidated, although at the beginning of this video, the walkthrough video, they did show a bit of the diplomacy, and some of the dwarves were up in arms and had low public order. Now the ones here are going to be the technologies for the sort of the way of the clans, which is more focused, like I said, on units. So there is still some percentage tweaks here and there on costs. It's going to be meant to drive down unit costs for longbeards, for gyrocopters and gyro bombers. You can also decrease unit duration by doing these upgrades. These upgrades. Large-scale shell production increases ammunition. Again, you have some decrease in corruption. Infantry buff speeds. And then what I thought was interesting was the forge-proven armor, which is a top-tier armor buff, +5 for armor and melee defense. Combine that with the previous one, which is master-crafted armor, which is +5 armor. If you start to stack that with experience, you start to stack that with different runes and things like that. With the buffs that you're going to be able to chain onto your units, I think we're going to be seeing some crazy broken dwarves with like 100 armor. So stay tuned for that. So if you want to pursue all the way up that tech tree, you're going to be able to get some really beefy dwarfs, that's for sure. They also showed off a bit of the technology tree here, showing us again the different tiers that you can get, and there is that cutoff where the arrow goes horizontal. That is a cutoff. A lot of your provinces actually can't get to the top tier. That's sort of restricted for settlements like Karaza Karak, things like that. And also they have a cool little eye indicator here where when you mouse over these units, it tells you, what else you need to build in order to get there. So this prevents us from having to, dive around into some sort of cumbersome directory like in Attila. They did go ahead and show us some of the Dwarven holds. Again, here this is kind of standard. It boosts income, increases public order and growth, and it provides garrisons. That's something we saw sooner and earlier. The dwarves here are going to be getting a healthy helping of iron breakers. Look at that, the great hold: 4 iron breakers, 3 hammers, 2 slayers, quarrelers, thunderers, flame cannon, and organ gun. That is going to be a huge defensive force. For the empire, I would almost take a Dwarven defense against the Empire defense. A couple more of the buildings we saw here: economic buildings, Gemcutter's Guild Hall, which produces 96 in gemstones. Again, like I said, we saw those gemstones in the early walkthrough, and it seemed like they're pretty unique in terms of resources. They're going to be hard to come by. Now you get a bunch of other buildings here that are more geared towards the military. So the Rune Forge, which allows for the Rune Smiths to be recruited. Again, we haven't heard too much from those guys, but repeated confirmation that they are here. The Foundry allows you to unlock a bunch of these different units. The Hangar unlocks, additional things like the Flame Cannon, the upgrades like the Gyro Bomber, and then the Gyrocopter with the Brimstone Gun. And the Engineers Guild enables hero recruitment of the Master Engineer, raises the limit on your engineers, and then allows additional recruitment of different units. So there are different ways to get about getting the Gyro Bomber, for instance, or the Flame Cannon. And I really want to see what the Trollhammer Torpedo is for the Iron Drakes. I have no clue what that is. I did see, we all did see Iron Drakes in action at the Battle of the Thundering Falls. I really want to see what the torpedo looks like. Yeah, that's kind of it for the end of the video. That's all I wanted to cover in this one. Again, a look at the technology tree and the building roster. I think it looks really cool. The more we see of this, the more and more promising it is. I do like how each faction plays differently and has its own crafted system. The technology's trees are set up differently. The buildings obviously have to be different, doing different things. So I think the uniqueness of Warhammer is going to be what stands out. And again, another mechanic for the dwarves is going to be the Book of Grudges, although I'm going to be covering that in another video. So stay tuned for more. See you in the next one. Peace out.